Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Good Radio Network, radio that does a world of good. This isn't your average talk radio show.
Blah, 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 yeah.
We're blasting away the old tried and not so true mold. Instead, TGRN turns talk into action. And action leads to doing positive things for people, our environment, and even the animals.
Well, I'm only one person. What can I do?
A lot. Join host Frankie Picasso while she turns talk into doing and gets results. This is the Good Radio Network. Yes, you can do it if you try, even if you're just a regular guy. Now here's your host, Frankie Picasso.
Good day and welcome to the Good Radio Network. I am your host, Frankie Picasso, and today I am so excited for you to meet my guest. But first, today's Good Minute. In honor of the passing of Dr. Wayne Dyer, beloved self-help guru, motivational expert, Hay House is making available to anyone this special opportunity to watch his movie, The Shift, for free. I think it's only available for the next 6 or 7 days. So if you are interested, go to the Good Radio Network on Facebook, which is facebook.com/The Good Radio Network, and I put a link there that will take you directly to the movie so that you can download it and watch it for free. Now, I know my guest today is having a little bit of a problem calling in, so I'm going to hopefully she can get in to see us. We are live now, so if she'd like to try again at 1-845-241-9943, maybe we can help her. With all her good wishes to be able to call in, she's having a little bit of trouble with the phone line for some reason. My guest is Neetal Parekh. She is the founder of Innov8social and the author of the upcoming book, 51 Questions on Social Entrepreneurship, and host of the Innov8social podcast. I'm just watching my board here, hopefully waiting for her to call in if she can. And I'm just going to check and see if I have another message from her telling me that she's still having trouble. It's always a little bit of a danger when you're live and things go a little bit funny, but it's okay. I have faith that she's going to get in. Some folks had a little bit of problems last week too, but they were calling in through Skype, so I'm not really sure what's going on. But I do want to have her on the show, and I do want you to hear what she has to say. So I'm going to wait just another minute before I introduce her, and let's talk about Dr. Wayne Dyer. Beloved guru, isn't he? I mean, who hasn't absolutely loved everything that he's done? And I know that for many, many years, Wayne has been somebody that I have looked up to. And I remember one of the most important things I thought he said, especially after 9/11, I was very disturbed about CNN and all of the news repeating and repeating and repeating. And if you remember back to that time, while it was a horrific event that happened, planes coming into the Twin Towers in New York City, I think what happened after was even more horrific, because as we watched and watched and watched the event over and over and over again, people became more and more depressed. Everything became very negative. And Dr. Dyer had once said, when I saw him, that he doesn't watch the news because if you can't change it, don't let it affect you. And I really took that to heart, because I noticed that, people sat glued watching the same event, over and over and over, and it was very disturbing. And I think we have her. Good morning. Is this Neetal?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank goodness we got you. I'm sorry you had some problems getting in here. I was just talking about Dr. Wayne Dyer, and in his passing, they have made his movie, The Shift, for free. Hay House has made it available for like 7 days. People can go and download it for free. And about how he spoke about the news and negativity, and if you couldn't change it, then maybe you shouldn't watch it.
Yes. I think that I read that they were trying to 3 million people watch it, so they're hoping that was their goal for releasing it, which is kind of great.
Well, let me introduce you now that you're here. As I said, and everybody's been waiting to meet you, this is Neetal Parekh, and she is the founder of Innov8social, author of the upcoming book, 51 Questions on Social Entrepreneurship, and we'll have to ask her why that is, and host of the Innov8social podcast. Neetal is a master storyteller, an experienced communicator with a specialty in social enterprise, startup social media strategy, writing, blogging, and public speaking. And you'll find out later today why that is. Today, social entrepreneurs are a new breed of business owners. They're conscious of their impact. They are pioneering solutions for social and environmental challenges, from mental health to nutrition, homelessness to climate change, and more. And it is in this space of social impact where Neetal shines. Her company, Social Innovation, works with entrepreneurs, companies, and individuals to help each of them reach their impact potential. With over a decade of experience in corporate education, nonprofit, government, social enterprise settings, Neetal holds a BA in International Political Science from UCLA, where she interned at the U.S. Consulate in Mumbai, India. She also pursued her interest in international work through volunteering in rural India and studying public human rights law in Geneva and Strasbourg. Neetal holds a JD and is licensed to practice law in Washington. Her past experience also includes strategy roles at FindLaw, consulting roles at Calvert Foundation, and Net Impact, as well as a handful of early stage startups. She was the 2012 New Leaders Council Silicon Valley Fellow, and she served on the advisory board. She's also engaged with the executive team of VLab, the MIT Enterprise Forum Bay Area chapter at Stanford University, as their outreach chair. So you can see she's scary smart, she's creative, innovative, exciting, beautiful, and she is now one of the Good Radio hosts, new hosts, strategic partners, and we are very happy to welcome her to Team Good and to the show. So welcome, Neetal.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Frankie. Thanks for the wonderful introduction.
When I go to your website, Social Innovate, or Innovate Social, these big bold letters, pop up, and it says, "How do you create impact?" So I'm going to ask you, how do you create impact?
That's a great question, and it's pretty fitting. I think over the course of my education and my work, I think that impact has always been kind of threaded in everything I do. So what's great about Innov8social is every single thing I do around this work, I feel like there's impact related. Every blog post, every piece of content, every interview. So I feel like everything is around the idea of creating impact through making this space more actionable and more available to people so that they can engage and that they themselves
I don't know where that came from. Sorry, that is so strange. I apologize. I don't know where that came from.
Oh.
How strange. Very weird. Okay, I'm sorry. Was that mine or yours? I don't know.
I don't know.
Are you still with me?
Yes,
that has never happened before. Okay. That has never happened to me before. Okay. The impact space.
Yeah, so the impact space. So that's just kind of what I'm, I feel like everything that I'm doing now is kind of all centered around this idea of creating impact or enabling people to create impact in what they're doing in their lives, in the startups that they launch, and their careers and the purchasing decisions that they make.
So when you were a little girl, and you what were you going to be when you grew up? What were you thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always been an animal lover, so I think growing up I was wondering if I might become a veterinarian.
Me too.
Yeah. So, but I think besides that, I think I didn't have a set plan, which was good because in college it definitely shifted. I started out in the sciences and ended up going in political science and business. So I think I've had an open kind of mind, but I've kind of had that little bit of that entrepreneurial sense as well. So finding ways to, satisfy all of those different things has been exciting.
I think you told me that you moved around quite a bit. You've lived many different places.
Yes.
So growing up?
I've lived in like 20 places growing up, probably before my early 20s. So my dad's a civil engineer, so he grew up moving all around. I was born in Oklahoma, and I've lived all around the U.S. And in Canada in part, and abroad as well. So it definitely made for an interesting childhood because we were sometimes in places for a year or 2 years and then moving. So just like the idea of being adaptable and being able to also kind of appreciate every different place or find something interesting or, unique about every place, whether it was, Pullman, Washington, or Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, or Boise, Idaho, or, Houston, Texas, just kind of finding ways to, make friends, kind of adapt and then also, find our own voices, and all of that was a unique experience.
Yeah, I'm sure all of that really helped to shape, who you are, because as you move, either you're very outgoing and you make new friends and you see things, or you become very timid and shy and say, what's the point? I'm going to move away again. It could go either way. But we're very glad that you were so adaptable, and I think it really helps. I think you need to be adaptable to be an entrepreneur, don't you?
Yeah, I think so, and I think especially in this space of like this social entrepreneurship or impact entrepreneurship, there's so many different variables at play. So you're, like some of the entrepreneurs I meet with, they're trying to create this incredible impact, social impact, plus they're trying to run a business. So being able to adapt to the circumstances, to the many moving parts and the variables, I think ends up being a strength for a lot of people in this space.
Yeah, one of the questions I know that you're going to answer in the book, but let's talk about this for a moment. Well, first I have to ask you, why 51 questions? Why not 52 questions?
So, we're used to 50 questions, but this is just one more,
Yeah,
just one more
and another thing. That's really cute. So if I was an entrepreneur today and I thought that I would like to start an impact venture, or I have an ongoing business, can I create impact now, even though I didn't intentionally start out to do that? Is that possible for me?
That's a really great question, and there are so many ways that companies do incorporate impact, even if it wasn't one of their founding principles. So there's a lot of different certifications out there. I'm sure a lot of the listeners, and you're probably also familiar with the B Corp certification or Fair Trade or many of those different ways. So those are ways that existing companies can kind of show their solidarity or commitment to creating social impact and things like that. And then there's the huge and growing space of corporate social responsibility, CSR. I think before, in the past decades, it was some companies were engaged and it was kind of a nod to okay, we're trying to do good, or it's maybe part of their marketing campaign. But it's shifted so much. Now companies are so engaged, and, their CSR policies and initiatives are really interactive and things like that. So I think those are ways that existing companies can engage. And there's also legal structures and all of these really structural kinds of ways too. But we're at a really amazing time, I think, of history where there's people are rethinking business just as a way business works, and trying to think about ways that that impact can be a part of that, and it's not it's not okay, this is what I do during my my hours at work, and then afterwards I volunteer and do good things. They're looking for some kind of synchronicity, maybe.
Is there a percentage that a corporation, let's say as far as impact goes, is there a percentage that says, okay, now I'm a company with impact, or is it 30% or 40% or 10%? What that allows them to say that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the field is still emerging and evolving. So some of those kind of objective benchmarks aren't there yet, and a lot of the terms are self-prescribed kind of. So I think the industry that's supporting social entrepreneurship is kind of working to create some benchmarks that are more, objective. So I think hopefully if we don't see something like that now, in the future we can. There are some different assessments and things company know to kind of gauge their impact. So B-Lab has, I think, a free assessment on their website. But yeah, I don't know if there's an exact number around that.
It's really interesting when you go to research this work, because every I don't know, is it every decade or whatever in business, there's I call it the bingo buzzwords, and everybody starts talking the same rhetoric and the same acronyms and the same, what I'm talking about. And it's interesting that each generation of business kind of has their own They're like even 10 years ago, it was totally different than from today. The words that people are still, using similar words that come around in business. It's very interesting to me. So if I wanted to start, one of the things that your company does and that you specifically do is that you offer tools to help people do this, to reach their impact and to see what their impact is today. So what kind of tools are those?
Yeah, so right now a lot of the tools are around actionable information. So how could you, as like a startup founder, kind of figure out what your options are? Because one of the things, and I think one of the amazing things about the space, but one of the things that that could also lead to challenges is that now there's so many more options, and I think that there's this, paralysis of analysis that can happen because sometimes you're like, already I'm a startup founder, there's already a million things I have to do. Now I have to think about all of these extra legal structures and these different business models. So I think that's really what Innov8social is kind of what we are trying to be, is like the easy button for social impact, to learn what you need to do so it's actionable so you can actually go and make decisions. So a lot of like with the podcast and the book coming up, there's an online class that we're working on, and these are all tools to distill the information so okay, based on the kind of company that I'm trying to launch, I think these two legal structures are good options, and I think this certification would be a good one, and I think that's where we can focus our time. Or maybe you say, right now a whole legal structure we're just not in the position to do that, so we'll just start in a simpler way and maybe try for a certification or something like that, and we can map out our plan, and maybe in the next couple of years we can think about incorporating some of the other elements and aspects. So I think that's kind of that's the space that I am from my when I've had a chance to speak and engage with people, I realize that even though this information has now been out for 4 or 5 years, like the different and a lot of my lens, like you'll hear legal structure a lot because that's my lens into the space, but there's still a lot of people don't know about it or are unsure, or it feels overwhelming. So I think some of the work that I'm trying to do is just to make a lot of that simpler, and so that you have what you need so you can really just go and act and do, and kind of like I tell myself always, how can I reach my impact potential as well? So kind of help people to reach theirs and help them in their companies as well.
So I guess it's almost like you really have to have clarity. That elevator speech of clarity of what your business is and what it is that you want to accomplish with that business in the social impact, sphere, I guess. It's twofold, but it could be one. It could be that your business is actually to make an impact, or the impact is secondary to what your business is.
Yep, and that's a really great point you bring up, because there's this idea of some companies will call themselves we're impact first, because what they're saying is like our bottom line is second, but we're impact first, and that's an interesting space because you also have nonprofits, and many nonprofits also have amazing revenue models and are doing well, but they would say they're impact first, and that's why I think there's also this blurring of lines between what we've always thought of as for-profit and nonprofit, and now we have these hybrid, so it's a very interesting kind of time to be, just kind of looking into this thing. And I think what's great is the more people we bring to the table, the more creative ideas that will come out of it, both in the sense of really interesting and creative business models and different ways. Another big area in the space that's interesting is how do you measure impact? Like we know, we have an idea of a bottom line that companies can look at. We have a stock market. We have ways of measuring and analyzing a bottom line, but this idea of this triple bottom line that's looking at more than just profits, but that's looking at the people and the planet that a company impacts, we're still learning what that means to quantify that and be able to compare apples to apples.
Yeah, they managed to do it with quality. So if you can assess quality, and I think impact is similar in a way because it does take into effect the culture and the business model and the spokes of the wheel that quality has as you go into this impact organization. But a lot of people are confused, I think, because the first thing that you would think of is I want to go do good in the world. Oh, then you're going to be a nonprofit. Like that's the first, But nonprofit, again, doesn't mean that you don't make money. So can you explain to us a little bit? Because I think some people would like that clarification between nonprofit, profit, B Corp. Like, what's going on?
For sure. So you're completely right in that nonprofits, there are some that have incredible revenue models and business models. And then within the nonprofit sector, it's also really broad, and there's so much happening. There's also nonprofits that are more charity-oriented, like that they base the work that they do based on the donations that they get. And so then to run that as a company is difficult because they're totally based on the kinds of donations. And sometimes that structure is needed. Like you have relief organizations, and their sole purpose of existing is to serve after some kind of crisis or to do really important work in that way. The challenge that some nonprofits face, or when people are thinking about starting an entity or organization and they're kind of considering whether a nonprofit is the right way to go, is that sometimes you are dependent on grants or donations or funding cycles or foundations or things like that. And what that can do, and the challenge that can have, is that it's hard for a company to kind of build a business model that's sustainable when they don't know that other piece. They don't know if they're going to get the second 3-year grant to continue their work. So that can be the challenge with a nonprofit. And that's why I think some of the entrepreneurs or founders right now that are just starting their companies or entities now are thinking, is there another option? And then, of course, they can go the for-profit, and there are some really lean for-profit model, structures, like you can have an LLC or a corporation. What's interesting about that is that the idea of creating impact is not necessarily baked in, into the core of that structure. So with those structures, especially looking at U.S. law and some other countries, there's still this idea that you want to maximize profit, and that impact is kind of a side thing that you can have, but it's not core to the reason that you started the company. And that's where I think a lot of these new legal structures have emerged to fill that space. So you have the benefit corporation in the U.S. There's also the special purpose corporation that a few states have passed, and these limited low profit, limited liability companies. So these are different legal structures that basically kind of say that impact is part of the essence of why this company exists. And so that's kind of another, that's kind of an emerging option. And what I really think, and Frankie, I wonder what you think about this too, is I think what's really different right now than in different times of business is this idea of this millennial, the millennials coming into force in the workforce and in entrepreneurship, because I think it's the millennial generation that kind of says, hey, we don't want to do business the way it's always been done. We want something else. And I think that's powering a lot of the potential that's out there, in the social impact space, in the social entrepreneurship space.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing today is collaboration between organizations and people. That this new generation likes to sit around a table and generate ideas, and it's kind of less ego and more let's do, It's not I invented this, but hey, you know what? We got this table of brilliant minds, and I've got pieces of the puzzle, and you do too, and let's just do it. I see that happening, and I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think we see a lot of it even on the tech side. People like the millennials now have grown up with things like Wikipedia and things that are very open source that are kind of contribution related. So it's a different way of thinking about starting things and engaging in things and sharing things. It's like a very unique mindset, and it's kind of exciting,
As a matter of fact, I was listening to Bill Bowman speak the other night, and he said that when he was talking to the Dalai Lama said that the next Dalai Lama will not be a person. It'll be a bunch of people. So, again, we're seeing this group mentality, this collaboration. It won't be one, it'll be many, and of a mindset. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's just it's an amazing time where there's kind of collaboration. And I think what's great about this topic of social innovation is that it's the innovations in technology and communication that are kind of enabling some of these barriers to kind of be lifted. So new kinds of people can collaborate and connect in new kinds of ways. So I think we haven't even realized the potential of that, like what that could lead to or what that can what that can achieve. And then, on balance, you have we have some of the world's most pressing problems, very much
ahead
of us, and that we can see, very clearly, everything from climate change to, overpopulation. We're approaching 7.5 billion people. The Earth has never supported a number that, before. So thinking about feeding and, housing and all of these things for this mass of population, our solutions now also have to be exponential. It's almost like we have to meet at that level.
Right, and that is very exciting, because I was just thinking about the greed of corporation, and on the one side you have the oil companies, and then you have PETA or something equally. So you have these opposing forces, and now what you have emerging is this millennial group that is saying, you know what, I want to make money and I want to do good things in the world, and I think that we can do both, and so we don't have to be separate anymore. We can be one. And I can look after, civil rights and social action and environment. I can go after, help human rights and educate the world, and, help women who know how to survive on $1 a day. We can do all of those things, and we can still keep our company healthy and make money and keep the finances of the world so that everybody doesn't crash and people can still own houses and do all that kind of great stuff.
Yeah, and what's great about that is maybe before, if you were starting a company that way, you would say, I don't know if people will pay for this. They may have to pay a little bit more, or they may have to, if it's organic or if it's sustainably, But now, as consumers, we're seeing the shift also where there is that consumers want to pay for, they want to be participating in that. And that's actually it's probably a $300 billion plus industry, which is this what they call LOHAS, the lifestyle of the healthy and sustainable. And it's this whole kind of a known segment of the market that is actually actively seeking goods and services and products that are in this, in this category. So what's great, if you're an entrepreneur today, you actually know that there's a market that's out there and growing for you to create this, amazing impact-oriented good or service that you're...
Yeah, I mean, people are buying today based on alignment of values with an organization. And I think Whole Foods said that they were the first who came out and did a values kind of commercial based on affecting people, because people wanted to align with that value of the organization rather than something else, right? So we're seeing that now that and I think that for a long time, I've been there, but when an organization gives their mission and their vision statement, people would buy it because, it's craft, but maybe now we won't buy craft because we'd rather buy something else, even though it's name brand, because, they're helping the animals, or Coke is helping the polar bears, or whatever. Maybe that's why I want to buy that product rather than it tastes good, or, my mom used it. So we're buying on, because of our value, rather than not the value of the product, but the values that we have as people. I value this rather than just because I know the name. So they're letting us know who they are. Tom's shoes, or, you're going to buy Tom's shoes because you know that they're going to give shoes to children, around the world. As soon as I buy a pair, somebody's going to get a pair that doesn't have any. So obviously I want to buy, if that's my value system, then I want to buy that because I want to make sure that somebody gets a pair of shoes.
Yep, that's exactly, and it's kind of neat that, because of the success of companies like Tom's, they've kind of proven out that is a business model that can be sustainable as well, And it's interesting because I mentioned them as an example in the book, and in researching, there is some, even with Tom's, they're obviously doing good in the sense that they've donated, millions of shoes at this point. But there's also controversy around there's space in this sector to also question. So there's some questioning around Tom's, brown people are saying, is giving something away, is it really solving the issue of why, let's say why the kids don't have shoes? But I think what's really great about this space of social entrepreneurship is it is space to have those questions and discussions, and maybe the next iteration of startups will will do it a different or a different way, having seen what successful companies like Tom's have done. So I think now we're not at the very, very beginning stages of social entrepreneurship. We're a little bit further in.
I want to ask you what you think of this, because this really bothers me. You go to your favorite grocery store or some outlet store, and they said, you're at the cash register. Oh, do you want to give $2 today to our charity, children who are homeless or something? And it kind of really bothers me that I'm going to give them $2 and everybody's going to give them $2, and they're going to get this huge tax write-off. And I don't know if they care about it or not, and I don't know how much money is going to actually go to this charity or not. But it seems like the charity is just a way, okay, oh, look at us, we're really doing good things. But it doesn't seem as impactful to me as if that was part of their actual strategy. They're going to give money, not asking people for their money. Like, I'm going to buy your product, and out of that, you're going to give away money, not ask me for more money so that you can give away money. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, that's kind of been some of the traditional ways that people have done fundraising and charity, collecting donations for charities. And what's interesting is now is maybe for you as like a savvy, conscious consumer, you might say, I wouldn't mind if some hand soap or something, maybe you wouldn't mind spending like 50 cents more on it, knowing that part of that went to something that was connected to, reducing plastic waste or something like that. So maybe you would say, rather than giving to something that you have no idea, you'd rather give to a company that you like their product, you like what their value system is, and kind of, so that's kind of part of your participation in the impact economy, is that you're supporting companies like that. And maybe that you feel like will have a greater impact in the long run, because you're not only buying something and getting something out of it, but you're also kind of supporting the company and making it possible for them to continue their work. And if they are like one of these newer kinds of social impact companies, it's very likely that they're integrally involved in some of the core issues around impact or sustainability or something like that. So so maybe I think you bring up a really great point. The way people think about kind of financially supporting the sector might be kind of fundamentally changing than as it has been in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting, because with the nonprofits, I think they're finding out today that there's this compassion fatigue, because so many people are asking all the time, and you feel bad when you say no. But everybody has their own charities that they give to, and money and reasons why they need to give. Maybe a brother, a mother, a father died of cancer, whatever, right? And we're bombarded all the time. Can you give me more money? I think when the strategy is built into the organization, it's a better fit. For me anyway, and maybe for others, because I think people are tired of giving. I think I see it all the time. Even with the show last week with, little Luke, who needs to come to the U.S. and get this life-saving, cancer surgery or treatments that he can't get in the U.K. 1 donation, 2 donations. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I think it's really just a different way people are engaging kind of now, and it's a donation kind of is a one way. It's like a one way one way to kind of engage. But if it's a company or a product or service, it's a relationship. It's like you could be continuing to be part of their community or engaging in the future and stuff. So, I think that there's space for everything, and I'm sure, there's space for amazing nonprofits like the Red Cross, who go and are so well, situated to go and help in some of the most dire situations. And we need, maybe in that way, we don't want to have to think about them being a company, but that they are a nonprofit, and that's their sole purpose. But then in other spaces, I think that there's space for this kind of middle, kind of a convergence, and where there's kind of space for startups to innovate and think differently about products and about the policies that they're supporting that create opportunities to further some of the the legislation or the policies around what's causing the issue that they're passionate about, whether it's, education or climate change or sustainability, that you see a lot of the startups now, they're actually engaged on the policy side, too, of saying, how can we change things in a really meaningful way? And I think that's kind of a really, that maybe we'll see change happen faster, kind of
I think the policy is important. Yeah. What as you teach, because you teach entrepreneurs, you offer a lot of, you speak before a lot of people. Are there like 1, 2, 3 questions that come up all the time that you hear in different groups?
Yeah. So in my prior role, I was designing curriculum and teaching a lot of entrepreneurs, and I get the chance to speak a lot. So actually, just recently spoke to high school students who are all like student leaders that were interested in healthcare change and being like leaders, and they were all amazing leaders from around the world. So what was great, and I love speaking to high school and students, you kind of get a different, you just get a different set of questions, and a lot of the questions that come out is around entrepreneurship. How do you get started? Like, what is the first thing to do once you have an idea? A lot of people want to know, when should you, how long should you be working on the product before you release it, and so I think it's kind of great. A lot of people want to know, how do I find a co-founder? I have an idea, but how do I find, and especially if it involves a tech tool or something like that, where one co-founder is on the technical side or isn't, and they're trying to find trying to find a good group.
Sure, partner.
So that's really, that's kind of interesting. And then if I'm speaking more about legal structures and things like that, a lot of people have questions on how does the benefit corporation, if that's in legal structure, how does it work, and how many what states have passed it and things like that. So you get a kind of mix of questions depending on who you're talking to. But what's really amazing, and I wonder if any of your listeners have participated, but there's so many great workshops and programs to learn about entrepreneurship and kind of engage. There are ones that have they're hackathons, they're 2-day workshops that you can just kind of immerse yourself. There's a startup weekend, and they often have a startup weekend for social good, and a number of other ones that you can just kind of jump into, and in a few days you could almost learn a set of skills and see yourself as an entrepreneur and work on an idea. And I think this kind of hackathon method is often really effective for entrepreneurship because you can actually get really far in a short amount of time, and you can test out a lot of things that can save you a lot of time, over a course of months that you could actually do over a course of hours. So it's cool.
That's really exciting, and it's great to innovate with other people because that's what entrepreneurs do. They're creative. Once the creative juices flow, everything's possible. So it's very exciting to be in a room full of other people because so often entrepreneurs I have found that people who don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, they don't understand why somebody would want to go into business for themselves. They're afraid. They think it's safer to work for somebody and get a paycheck. They don't get it. And so it's a relief sometimes to be in a room full of people who do get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. And I think what's great is people are thinking about risk in different ways now. So if you can find ways to, there are different competitions and things like that you can go to get some seed funding. Like there's one called the D Prize. D stands for distribution, and the D Prize can give up to $20,000 even if you formed a team and were able to kind of secure some funding. Now you kind of lessened a little bit of that initial risk, so you're kind of ready to jump in and try things out. And people are thinking about their education in different ways too. So they might,
right.
I feel like I've heard more, and I wonder if you've also heard, I've heard more and more people say they're taking a gap year in between, high school and college or after college and their next thing. And I think so people are finding ways to build in this exploration time. So, so I think that makes it, it makes it possible for things like social entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship in general to kind of flourish, because you almost, if everyone is just on a very set path, there may not be space for things like starting a company or something like that. But I think that now people are rethinking and retumbling their idea of their trajectory, and kind of there are these pockets where they're like, yes, I'm going to like jump in and try this thing, that I've been thinking about.
There's a young man I'm coaching currently who is an entrepreneur. He's 19, very exciting stuff. But he likes to learn online. He didn't go to college, but he says, I take a lot of courses online, entrepreneurial stuff. And so do you have any products that you think that might become an online product for entrepreneurs, kids who like to learn online or don't?
We're working on an online class right now, so that could be a great resource. And as the book comes out, and for him, I think even if he's good about if he enjoys reading, like there's a number of blog posts now that are up, over 300 that are about that kind of walk through different things on entrepreneurship. So those things are also available. And then even I'm sure he's so connected to some of the other tools, the broader tools out there. But there are now online classes on aspects of social entrepreneurship on Coursera and Khan Academy and all of the different online platforms.
So if somebody came to you, Neetal, and they said, I've got an idea for a fantastic product invention, it's going to change the world, revolutionize, it's going to have deep impact. Are you encouraging people to copyright their ideas or to do something like that to safeguard, or is that necessary?
I guess it depends on kind of like what kind of idea they have. I would say like with entrepreneurship, like 90% is the perspiration. So I would say like for an entrepreneur, don't let that protection of, like holding or kind of trying to protect your idea limit you or stop you from actually seeing whether that idea is worth its worth its weight in anything. So I would say there's especially in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, there's this big idea of like sharing ideas and like just pitching whenever you can. I always say, always be pitching, because if the moment we start to say, okay, I'm not going to share because I'm not sure. I mean, there's a chance, yes, that someone's going to take your idea. The hard part of your idea isn't the idea; it's all of the work that's going to be required to make that idea into a reality, and that is something that's not easy. So.
I have some Frankieisms, and one of them is that opportunities aren't lost; they're not actioned upon, and that's the thing. I mean, people, you can watch a commercial or see something, and people go, "Oh, I thought of that. I thought about that 8 years ago." Yeah, well, you didn't do anything with it, and that's what you're saying. It's that you got to get in there and work it, make it happen. Exactly. That's what entrepreneurs do. They make it, they create it, and that's what I love about entrepreneurism. For me, is that birthing experience, is like birthing that idea and turning it into reality. That's exciting. For me, that's the most exciting part.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think what's so great is if you do just kind of, there's this idea of the lean approach to startups, and you have like the simplest version of what you want to build or put out there, and you put that out there, and then you let people interact with it. You let them comment or say what features they'd rather see, and things like that. In a short amount of time, you can actually kind of make sure that you're building something that somebody wants. And I think that's, I think as you see some of the new startups that are trying things out in the social entrepreneurship space, it's interesting because I've been interviewing and working on this for the past 4 years. So there are people that I've talked to, like, who after a couple of years are no longer working on that social enterprise. Like, it doesn't exist in that form. But what's great is that they tried a lot of things, and maybe that wasn't the iteration, but that they themselves now have all of that knowledge of, like, what worked, what didn't work, and they're carrying that to whatever next thing that they're going to, So I think that's the other big thing with this space is that you have to rethink, you have to think differently about failure. I think especially about when you're thinking about the impact space, because, you may not have, maybe your goal was to help 1 million people and you only helped 1,000. First of all, you still help those 1,000. But secondly, you got all that experience that you can carry on to whatever great thing you do, next.
Exactly. I love that. That's right. I keep telling my kids that same thing. It's you're adding to your toolbox. It doesn't matter if you're never going to, if that's not your career for the rest of your life. You've added something to your toolbox that's going to be useful as a transferable skill in something else. So tell us, I'm really curious about your time spent in India, in Mumbai, when working with not with the government, but with in the small villages. What did you do there?
Yeah, so that was one of the most life impacting times. 2003, and there had been an earthquake in this region, a rural region in India called outside of Bhuj. And my family is from my family is from India. Both my parents grew up in Mumbai, which is a big metropolis, huge city.
Sure.
This was a small village, so even my family hadn't grown up in like a village, per se. But we went. I found an organization that my sister, her good friend, was connected to. So I had a chance to go there, and even though it had been 2 years since the earthquake, and some really great work had happened, there was still a lot of areas of rubble. Some areas that you walked to, it felt like the earthquake happened yesterday, and not 2 years ago. And then the organization that I worked with was doing a lot in education. So they had built schools. So we were literally in these huts. We were sleeping and teaching out of these kind of mud huts with
wow.
It was a temporary area. So I basically showed up and said, I want to help in any way you have me do anything. I have come without any preconceived notions. So I helped out in the office, and then I taught 2 classes of English. So I taught girls that were in 5th grade, and then an adult class of a lot of the people that helped and were volunteers, or some of the adults that wanted to learn English. And it was, I would say that I learned so much more and gained so much more from the kids. A lot of the kids that were living there at the orphanage had been personally affected by the earthquake. Some of them had been had lost a parent or 2 or family members. Some of them were just in other ways directly impacted. And to see, first of all, how much hope and joy and laughter that they shared and spread was amazing. And to kind of see them learn, be so excited about learning and having this space that was a safe space to learn. And there were a lot of, besides myself, there were a number of international people coming through. So they almost had this steady stream of people that could tell them about the world, and their curiosity and interest was just it was just amazing. And what was nice is that this is this is in 2003, I mentioned. So there wasn't great internet access, but we did have some pretty good internet access in different internet cafes and stuff. So what I did is I told my friends here, my college friends, I said, hey, can you guys be pen pals with my students? So that kind of forced my students to write letters, and I would type them up and email my friends, and my friends would type things back, and I would print them out and show them. But we created a little pen pal system, and so it was so meaningful to both sides. My friends loved it, and then the kids, the students, were just they felt so they still wanted to make sure they were using the correct English, So that was a really special, very special time. And what was really special for me was that my mom actually joined me. And it's very interesting in areas my mom, even though she grew up in India. I'm sorry, there's a truck coming by. She grew up in India. She didn't always do a lot of this nonprofit kind of volunteer work. And so for her, it was just so neat for me to see her. It was just so neat for me to see her in that role of teaching and volunteering, and that was very special too.
Wow. So do you speak different languages? Do they speak? What did they speak, to Urdu or?
Yeah. So they spoke Gujarati, which is the language that I kind of grew up speaking as well, and then they spoke they spoke a little Hindi there, and they had some different dialects and languages as well. So I could converse a little bit. I'm not very literate. I can't read and write Gujarati, but I could speak. So what was great is they would be correcting my Gujarati as I was correcting their English. And in order for me to teach, my Gujarati improved quite a bit too, because just they would I'd see them all giggling or laughing like I'm using the wrong word. So
That's so cute. Oh my gosh! You know, the other day I got on Twitter, a young girl. I think she was from Pakistan. She says, "I want to come and work for you," and I said, "Well, what do you mean you want to work for me?" And she says, "Well, I went to a class about being an entrepreneur, and I want and motivation, and I want to be a motivational speaker, and I want to change the world, and I want to to give this message of peace and love." And I felt so bad because I have nothing that you can come and work for me, but it's so beautiful to see that she had taken this class and that she wanted to send this message out to the world and somehow do that. And I thought, wow,
that's
how can
great.
I help
you have to find a virtual internship program that you create.
Well, we're not that big, but I just love the idea that they're getting education. And this education is giving them these, grand, beautiful ideas of how they're going to go change the world. And that's amazing to me. I love that. Yeah, it's, there's nothing more important than education. We don't know what we don't know. And sometimes that can be a good thing in business, to have the person who knows the least offer the solution because they don't have preconceived conceptions. And at the same time, especially with entrepreneurs, to have people who are educated, because education, brings so much to the table.
Yeah, totally. And now with new ways to learn and new ways to connect, like the fact that she learned something and then looked you up and found you, it's such an amazing. So many things had to happen and had to be available for those things to happen.
It's crazy how people find you now, isn't it? It's just a new world. It's such a new world, and it's changing all the time. And we have, even with the B Corp, everybody I have spoken to in business, who is in business, nobody has heard of that. Now, in your world, everybody probably has, and maybe that's Silicon Valley. I don't know, but here, the different people I've talked to throughout the U.S. On the eastern, seaboard or Canada, they haven't heard of it. And I think that's interesting. So the impact there's still lots of room.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I first started the blog and even first started thinking about the book, I thought it would be a much more, I won't say academic, but more kind of a deeper study into case studies and things like that. But through speaking and engaging, I realized that that's not really the need that I see. It's more just letting people know that these things are out there, and that people can, what it is and how to use it,
Yeah. So what would you say that your top 5 qualities for an entrepreneur? What would somebody need, in your opinion, a good entrepreneur? What should they be, or who should they be, or how should they, what value should they have, or just, describe the perfect entrepreneur?
Well, I think that there's probably a lot that can coexist to be effective. But I think someone that I've seen in the 70 or 80 interviews I've done is that you see a tenacity. That's a huge thing, because a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you see something in your head, but it's up to you to explain that and prove that out to people who are you're crazy, that can never happen, but I mean, so I think that kind of belief in yourself and the tenacity to kind of pursue it, even if it doesn't seem, it's not readily available or apparent that it's going to be successful or, worthwhile. So I think that's one. I think adaptability, and I don't just say that because it's one of the qualities that I've, have kind of created through time, but I think there is something, because especially in today's world, for entrepreneurship and everything, tomorrow if some new technology comes out or some innovation happens, everything that you've been planning could completely change.
Right.
It's so I think being able to know that
flexible
even
or
whatever you're building, know that everything you're building could shift depending on how the ecosystem around it, changes.
Good point.
I think, and I think other qualities are communication. I think being able to communicate well, and it's huge, because you start out with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people, and being able to communicate between like just your small group is huge. But then as you grow and scale and you have like hundreds of people or thousands of people, like you're, especially in the social impact space, you're communicating not only the business goals, but also how you're creating impact through time. And so I think that communication, is really helpful. I think a sense of humor doesn't hurt, because sometimes, in being able to kind of laugh at yourself and laugh at, at each other and all of that kind of can keep things light enough where you can, kind of continue on, to the next thing and be able to reflect in different ways and, and just have a good time with it. And I think so. I think those are some good qualities.
Those are excellent qualities. Yeah, those are very good qualities and traits. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I like that. You talk about storytelling, and I know that we said that you're a master storyteller, and storytelling is important because you have to be able to share that vision and make other people see it. So what would you encourage people to do in order to become more proficient at that? Yeah,
and I think I've spent a lot of time teaching and delivering content around pitching, and so that's an amazing kind of frame for storytelling, because you're often pitching in 2 or 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes, and you're telling the whole story, you're trying to take all the complicated things that your company or that you're trying to do and simplify it in something that's digestible to someone who doesn't maybe know anything about what you're doing. So I think one big thing to start out with in storytelling, and this might be counterintuitive because you think it's all about you, but to start out with and thinking first, who is your audience? Because a lot of times when we make some initial assumptions, you may completely lose your platform to tell your story, because if you come in and just start throwing around buzzwords and things like that, and you realize, then you find out later that your audience had zero knowledge and never even heard of this field, or they may not have even kind of engaged. Like, you may just kind of miss that opportunity. So I think knowing your audience is good, and then thinking about what to them and with your story is going to resonate the most. So a lot of times, I think if you're if you're telling your story in places where they don't know much about your topic, starting with something really personal, like a very personal story, can help to invite them into the space with you, like where it doesn't feel like I have no idea about this technology, I don't even know about the startup, I don't know if they're going to make it, I don't know what, So I think that's another part of storytelling is something personal. Humanizing. It can be funny, it can be, and then use that as a frame to kind of, to explain, then we talk about, set up, if you're pitching, let's say, set up the problem that you're solving, and then the solution that your company or your product or service offers. So kind of framing it in that way. But I think what happens, and now that I've seen a lot of pitches, is that sometimes what they're building and everything is amazing, it's great, and people will be really interested, but you can get a little lost in how that story is told. Like, you can kind of miss the gem there because maybe it's hidden, or it's or you.
I have to stop you. I'm so sorry. We have less than 90 seconds. It went so quick.
Oh, good.
Neetal Parekh was my guest today. She is the founder and CEO of Innov8social. And your website, really quickly, tell us where we can get it, find you.
Yeah, it's Innov8social, INNOV, the number 8, social.com.
Thank you so much for being my guest today. You've been absolutely amazing. And I know that everybody who's going to be listening to this later on today and in the future is going to be absolutely fascinated by you. Thanks again, Neetal, for joining the Good Radio Network, for coming on as my guest today, and for doing what you do with Innov8social. Take care. Bye now. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. This has been the Good Radio Network with the Princess of Positivity, Frankie Picasso. Are you ready to walk the talk? Turn talk into doing? Then get out there and do a world of good. You've got the power.